Okay, I think we'll start and then people will join as the time will go on. So, Jodi-Ann, could you please unmute yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hi, everyone.
great.
Okay.
So, you guys are, if you, whatever works for you, Russian or English, doesn't matter. Just join the conversation, type in the chat. Ребят, если немного на английском будет непонятно, то вообще без проблем. Задавайте вопросы на русском, пишите в чат, и мы это будем транслировать и так далее. Поэтому вообще без проблем, даже не переживайте. Окей, давайте я вначале представлю Jodi-Ann. Начну представлять ее на английском. Okay, so Jodi-Ann is my friend from Kenya. So I myself, not all of you guys might know me. So I'm another mentor at 360. And I currently study at Kenyon as a sophomore. So this is second year. But obviously, due to recent events, I'm back home right now, finishing online semester. So is Jodi-Ann. So Jodi-Ann is a senior international studies honors student at Kenyon. She's also a senior class president and a senior admission fellow. She was the Kenyon Music Scholarship recipient for jazz trombone at Kenyon, and she was also recruited for rugby at multiple different universities 4 years ago. She also runs blog, Quintessential Kenyon, and today she will join us. I mean, she is already here to talk about, well, her interests are international studies, policy development, and she will talk primarily about the student life, which I'm sure you guys are interested about. And another thing, she just got into Cambridge University. And a quick fact, she also got into other 7 universities for grad school that she applied to, which include many very prestigious US schools and UK schools and in Europe. So the format of the seminar would be kind of an interview between her and I. I'll ask questions to her, and then we'll have a Q&A. And please, guys, have a warm welcome for her and ask whatever questions you have. Okay, so Jodi-Ann, could you please talk a bit more about your Kenyon/liberal arts colleges experience that you had in the past 4 years?
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty loaded question, but I think what I can first talk about is kind of what got me to Kenyon in the first place,
Right.
and like how I ended up at a liberal arts college. And so, as you mentioned, I was recruited for rugby at a few schools, most of which are big schools on the East Coast, Ivy schools. Women's rugby is not as popular of a sport as other schools, so with that, my selection came quite limited. But I also started looking at liberal arts colleges for its obvious qualities of having much smaller classes, and I wanted a place where I am able to engage with other people on a very personal level. And in my opinion, a liberal arts college could offer me that because of like the small class sizes, of it being more often than not undergraduate students only, where I am not applying to go into a school within the university, but just a school. So I have more freedom and flexibility with what I want to study. That to me was so important that it kind of actually, like, being at Kenyon set me off on a complete different path than what I wanted to study originally going into college. But overall, I guess in retrospect, after 3 and almost 4 years, it's been a huge journey of growth and reflection, and a lot of things. And I guess, like, as cliche as it sounds, you learn a lot about yourself over the course of 4 years, as many expect in college. But I think that process was especially more cultivated because I was at a liberal arts college. And I guess we can go into like what are the differences, or we can talk about our experiences. But I think overall it's a lot of challenges to think and to act and to
Right.
kind of like make things happen almost.
Yeah. Another thing that, guys, I would like to mention is that she's also an international student. So that kind of puts things into perspective, like what's the admission was for her. I would want to ask you about, could you elaborate more on your student life at Kenyon? Like, what was memorable? Why did you like being in a small school?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I speak on this only like for Kenyon, which is
Right.
what I experienced, or what you and I experienced. It's that student life on campus, especially for a school that is in rural America, let alone rural Ohio, is very robust. In the sense that because there's so little people, because there's only you and 3 other years of students, the opportunities you get are more available, but also very refined. So with that, you have spaces where you can kind of cultivate interest almost. And I guess student life, other than having quite rigor academics, which is what all of us are faced, there's a lot that you can do with student life, and that goes as simple as maybe on a weekend to go support your friend at a sports game that is playing at home or away, or having concerts. There's a lot of student-run activities, which is what I found unusually high amongst liberal arts colleges, especially at Kenyon. Is we have about over 100 student affinity groups, so student-run organizations. And when every single organization is required to have to host an event for the entire campus in the course of a semester, that is 100 events for, let's say, 25 weeks. So by virtue of that, you have so much going on campus, as well as I think the school and Kenyon especially realized very early on what the location means in terms of what it can provide to the overall experience. And very much college is not just taking classes, is other things that you can do on the side, as well as you would know, like when applying to undergraduate schools, is not just about what the grades on your transcript, is about you as an overall applicant, the package that you bring. So there's a lot of space for you to kind of develop new interests or go and strengthen your old ones as well. And that goes from, arts to sciences to doing research on the side. Kenyon has Kenyon Review for people who are interested in English. There's varsity sports and club sports as well. You can work on the side as student workers or on work study, that Kamal and I both do as well.
Yeah, so I think for you guys, this is kind of a very interesting topic, because I'm sure not many of you guys know a lot about liberal arts in general, because I myself didn't know when I was leaving. So it's kind of like a whole different world. Another thing I think would be interesting if you could talk about you being a senior admission fellow, and for things like how does the interview go and stuff like that. Maybe some tips for students.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a very productive way and also a very useful way of using resources for Kenyon to have senior students who hold the position of senior admissions fellow to basically do interviews and handle the very humanizing part of the admissions experience. So if that means so as an applicant, you want to schedule an interview with the school, whether you are on campus or you can do an online one, you are actually talking to a senior student. So that's a 4th year student.
Right.
And I guess how we usually go about it is, it's 30 to 45. Sometimes I've had interviews that went to like 75, 90 minutes, where you just sit down and chat with the student. And it's not so much about, it's a dual process. Right. It's like 2-lane traffic. You're learning more about the school while the school is learning about you. And the whole reason behind the interview is that so you're not just a name on your application, or in some schools even worse, a number on your application. The process is meant to humanize you and to shed more light on your qualities beyond just what you can put down on your common essay or your supplement essay. So, you know, I guess tips for interview is, I hear a lot of students like linger with their questions, and, you know, starting off with like, well, I don't know. I mean, like, what the question that, and not having like a definitive answer. It's okay to have that change later on, but I think it's important to show kind of why you're there, like why you have taken the extra step to even go through an interview.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also, something that it's so important to know about the school that you're interviewing at, because the first question I always ask a student is, okay, so why Kenyan? What brought you here? You know, we're in the middle of nowhere, frankly, Ohio. Like, what brought you here? And I always follow that up with, so what are you doing right now in high school? Or what did you do in high school? And it's important to reflect on what you are doing, the classes that you're taking, the extracurriculars that you're doing, and to, you know, craft a narrative around that. Like, why are you doing the things that you do? It's so, Kenyan is because of how quiet Kenyan is, and frankly, a lot of liberal arts schools, given our location, you have a lot of time to think.
Right.
And so Kenyan, I'm sure Kamal, you can speak to this, it's a bunch of thinkers and doers. People think and they ask the big question. So I guess, like, for me as an interviewer during that process is, what do you want? What have you done? And what does it take to bring you to the next step, which is Kenyan? And what are you hoping to get out of that process?
So kind of a quick interruption. So like in my personal experience, Kenyan is in the village. So it's like, как будто бы просто в ауле. So there's just like 2,000 students, lots of professors, and that's it. That's like the only people you see around the year. But it's, you know, you really get to know people on a really personal level. Another question that I have, so for many international students, it might be the case that they can't go and visit campus right away. Do you guys host, I mean, us, Kenyan, do we host Skype interviews, or have you done that before?
Yeah, I've actually done Skype interviews with people from, quite frankly, every single continent on the world, which is really cool to begin with. Yeah, so Kenyan, actually, the admissions process is so holistic that if you are an international student visiting campus, you can also, they like to, you know, also be especially nice and welcoming to international students. So I've seen plenty of cases where the international student actually gets an interview with the admission officer that will look at your portfolio, as opposed to as opposed to just a senior fellow, which is helpful or nerve-wracking, depending on how you see it. But yeah, we do offer Skype interviews. We offer, you know, Google Hangouts. If that doesn't work, we can WhatsApp. It's a very human process. I think it's also, don't be afraid to put forward what you would want. Don't be afraid to say, like, I would like this. Can we make this happen? I would love to talk to more students who are in, you know, international studies, or I would love to talk to someone on the basketball team. Yeah, because that makes you seem like you know what you want, which is also good in the process. And admissions officers, it's not like they're sitting on their high horse. You know, it's a two-way street. So yeah, I'd encourage everyone to be more open and courageous, and like don't be afraid to ask. Usually the answer is always yes in a process like this.
So I guess a big thing that's going on with like admissions is just it's really important to show interest in a school, right? So that our students in general just understand that. So it's
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, write a thank you card to the people that interviewed you. You know, send them an email afterwards saying thank you, because every single, like, believe it or not, every single thing you do from the time you establish contact with the school goes into your portfolio. So if you send me a thank you email, that goes in your portfolio for saying, like, you're very keen and you're very interested. Every phone call you make has a little write-up everwards. Every email you send, every question you ask, the more you can put around your name, the
Right.
better it is for you in the long run because they know you better as a person.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah,
And that especially works for smaller schools. Yeah. So I guess for liberal arts schools,
exactly.
than other than big schools where, you know, there are just so many applicants and it's sometimes just hard to keep track of everyone.
Yeah, I mean, a Kenyan admission officer spends about 30 to 45 minutes per application, and they're
Right.
reading through your statements. Whereas at other schools, especially bigger schools, they might have a minute per application.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
Another thing that's personally interests me is, so I know junior year you went abroad
yeah,
and studied in Ghana and China.
yeah.
So could you talk more about how Kenyan or other small schools really encourage studying abroad, and what's that process like, and what did you get out of it?
Right. Um, I'd say to anyone that even remotely entertained the idea of study abroad to go with it. And I certainly don't think, though, where I have gotten to, where I have been able to get to within my academic journey would have been possible without studying abroad. Like it was kind of like the pillar that, um, that anchored my research. And I can talk more. But so basically, the process works as at Kenyan, you study abroad during your junior year, which is, I guess, your third year. You
Right.
can either do it for a semester or for the entire year. So Kenyan goes on a semester system. You have fall and then you have spring. Fall is, because some schools go on a tri semester system,
I
some go
already
on a block system.
graduated.
Yeah. So yeah, you can study abroad for the semester or for the whole year. Every single major can go abroad. So that means even if you're pre-med, trying to take the MCAT and go to med school, there's still a program out there for you. And at Kenyan, about 50%, so half of the students go abroad during their junior year, which is
Right.
highly popular. We have about, I think, 200 programs that are pre-vetted by our provost, which means they're not Kenyan programs, but you can apply to them through Kenyan and through the program, and you will easily get in. The process is very easy. It's not meant to it's not like a whole different college application process. It's meant to supplement your Kenyan experience because Kenyan can only offer you so much for what it is.
Right.
So for my junior year in the fall, I went to Ghana, and in the spring I went to China. And the reason why I chose these two locations is because for international studies, I focus on China-Africa relations. So it was kind of by virtue of that, I went to the places where I am studying to do on-the-ground research as well. So I was able to I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to conduct my research on, and not every single person has to do a research when you're abroad. This is just personal interest because I knew I wanted to come back my senior year, my fourth year, and write an honors thesis. So I did research interviewed about 100 something people when I was in Ghana. And because my program in Ghana is very research based, whereas my
Right.
program in China is very taught at like the biggest university in the country. Everything was taught in Chinese, and you're sitting in
Which is
class with 400 people.
which is
So
Beijing University, right? Or
yeah, it's Peking University. And so as you can see, one is very research heavy and the other one's very taught heavy, and both of them are so different from Kenyan, which
yeah.
is why study abroad was so good for me, is because I got this breadth and relatively some depth with different education curriculum, and you get to see the places from on the ground. And the good thing about Kenyan is that when you study abroad, your scholarship, your financial aid, your any financial packages goes with you when you study abroad, which
Right.
means more often than not, your program that you study is cheaper than your Kenyan tuition.
Yeah.
So Kenyan will write you a check. And in my case, Kenyan paid for my flight to Ghana and paid for my flight to China, which was, pretty
Yeah.
impressive. On their part to do that. So yeah, is there anything else you want me to talk about particular?
I think the more students will do research and just actually being on, like, already in the school, they'll know better whether they do need to do study abroad or not. Uh, kind
Yeah.
of going later, like in your journey, I was going to ask you your grad school application process. How did it go for you, and why did you choose to just apply and think of even going there?
Yeah, so grad school application process is quite time consuming. Or I guess like I applied to 8, so that's kind of my fault. But you start pretty early in the process because just like the the college application process, you know take your SATs and your ACTs, even
Right.
though I'm a advocate against standardized testing. But you know you still have to do it because that's kind of relatively still the norm. So yeah, for grad school you start taking your GREs, which is basically the equivalent of an SAT or ACT for graduate schools. You take that. I took that about, I think, the summer before my senior year,
Yeah.
which is quite late in my opinion. Like I could have done it earlier so I have more time to start my application, I think. And I don't work for a graduate admissions office, so I can't say. But personally, I think the most important piece in your graduate school application is, 1, your transcript, 2, your personal statement.
It's the same as
And yes, and it's
yeah,
all about, I think they'd expect you at this point, after studying a particular subject for 4 years, to know kind of, because grad school is an advanced degree. You're going
right.
there for, you know, not everybody do a master's, so you have to have a pretty good narrative and statement about why you want to do what you want to do. And of course, like grad school funding is also less available, which means in some instances, which means it's an investment in yourself. It's an
Right.
investment in your education, and it's not cheap. So
Could
yeah,
you,
that's
yeah, I'm sorry, could you talk a bit more about this whole thing of like crafting a narrative for an application to a grad school?
yeah. So
Like,
I
what
think
was
the
it like
one
for you?
right. I think the first thing you do is like find the right program for you, and
Right.
that's, you know, geographically speaking, length. What do you want to do? Like, do you want to work later on? Do you want to get your PhD later on, or do you not know yet? But you want an option that's convenient for both. What do you want to study? Because, you know, especially for international studies, and my focus is on development policy, as you said, or development. There's multiple ways you can go. You know, you can go the public policy route, you can go international affairs, you can do development studies, you can do regional studies, you can focus on, you know, economics, all of
Right.
that. Which, like in my case, I'm doing development studies because that's what I'm passionate in. So like having that refined focus is really important. And once you know that, you know, 2 pieces of, like, you know, 2 dots, right? You know what they are and you know what you want. And now you
Yeah.
just draw that connection. And in the
Yeah.
process you talk about, yeah, and then you talk about what you have done in preparation for that process. So that's classes you've taken, things that you're doing in and outside the classroom. It's, I think the biggest question that you have to answer, that you have to address, like, why do I want this, and where will this
Yeah.
take me?
Yeah.
And that's the 2 questions that I answered, that it took me the longest time to answer. Like it took me about 6 months for me to really figure out what I want. And by that time, I've lost a lot of opportunities already because I don't think I knew what I really wanted in the very beginning, because application process spans out through the entire year.
Right.
So the first few applications, I think it was at a loss, but it was not a loss like on the side, like, you know, like out the window, because they actually made me think more about what I want.
Right.
Um,
So I guess from this, my question is, so I would say like when you get into liberal arts school, you kind of have this whole broad opportunity to take whatever classes you want, kind of like figure out what you're interested in. But when we talk about like crafting a narrative, so like specifically like you gotta really go in depth and really think about what classes you take your junior, senior year, right?
yeah, I think by that point, because you declare your major, you know what you want to study. And of course, like, you know, at Kenyon especially, you have a list of major requirements you have to fulfill that refines that focus. But
Right.
also it's important to like know what you're taking and how that helps with what you are doing overall as an applicant. And the same thing kind of more or less with applying to undergrad as well. Whereas we're like, you know, trying to kind of backtrack a little bit, took a few steps back to what we were talking about earlier. the most important piece in your application, especially at least at Kenyon, is your transcript, because your
Yeah.
transcript is the only thing in your entire document that shows, I guess, 4 or 5 years of growth. It's not about whether you are a straight A student. If you are in 8th, 9th, 10th grade right now and you have a couple of B's or even a C on your transcript, that's okay. It's important to see what kind of classes you're taking. Are they the most challenging classes that your school offer? Are you challenging yourself up to that standard? And also, is there growth? I think they value the trajectory more than, a trend. They want to see an upward trend as opposed to static is what.
Yeah.
But by all means, if you have straight A's all years of high school, fantastic.
Another thing would be how important are recommendation letters?
Oh, good question.
How important it is, and how do you try to build that connection with your professors, teachers, and so on?
Yeah, and I think it's incredibly important to have good references, and I know that's usually lost in the process because you don't really have so much control over that, but in fact you do, and you have more control over that because at a smaller school where, at Kenyon, the faculty, the teacher to student ratio is 1 to 15. So for every 15 student, there is a professor, which means there's so much more available to you. Everyone has an advisor. Everyone takes classes with professors, and everyone goes to office hours. So you get to really know more about your professor. And the statistics at Kenyon, actually, I don't know, Kamal, I don't know if it's happened for you, but more than 95% of the students at Kenyon go to their professor's house for dinner during their 4 years on campus.
Well, I already did, so that might be true.
See, that hasn't, I'm like the 5% that didn't happen to, but again, that's an indication of how close the faculty and the students are. And my advisors and I, we grab coffee every single week. Professors at Kenyon get an advising fund that is specifically, in their bank account for them to take students out to meals and coffees and all of that. So, it's a process that's really heavily cultivated, the relationship between faculty and students, because, if you're in STEM, you do research together. Even if you're not in STEM, you can still do research together. Office hours is a big thing. Kenyon is a writer's college, so professors are there to help you write and better, as academically speaking. So over the course of your 4 years, it's almost impossible to not have a good relationship with at least one professor. Of course, more the better. And they're there to help you. Like, they entered academia for a reason. And when you enter academia, beyond your own research is to, uplift the next generation of students, as cliche as it sounds. So I think the relationship is really important.
Yeah, I think a useful question would be for our audience is, so like I know in some cases, for example, like in Kazakhstan, when you're in a high school, sometimes it's really challenging to build a relationship with the teacher, because you just, get to class, do your homework, pass it, do tests, and go home. So like, just your take on it. Maybe you haven't experienced it, but what do you think could work for high school students like in Kazakhstan to get that recommendation letter?
Yeah, I think I think if you're, and this is my personal opinion on this, I think if your application process is like a pie graph, right? The package that you put forward, if less weight can be put on recommendation letters, then maybe more weight should be put on your personal statement or your transcript or other things that's not the recommendation letter. But I think in terms of, finding the person to write a recommendation letter, and I can only speak on this from my perspective when, recommendation letter is also not that huge of a thing in the high school that I went to in Canada. I think it's important to be open and to say, hey, like, I'm going through this process. It's not what everyone around me is going through, but I need your help on this one so I can, you got to pull me through on this. And, it's sometimes what it takes is you meeting with them and say, this is why I am doing this. And I would love it in the recommendation letter if you can reflect on this as well. You know, you might not, but you might not know me that well, but I'm here and I'm ready to like tell you more about me, so you can help me through this process.
Right.
Yeah. So I guess being open is communicative. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I think for the whole part, we're kind of coming to an end, but now it's a Q&A time, question and answers. So, ребята, если у вас есть какие-то вопросы, все что угодно, пишите в чат, или даже лучше, если вы аудио включите и будете спрашивать на английском, русском, как вам удобно, что вы думаете? Yeah, so let's wait for questions if there are any. Okay, let's not keep it quiet then. How about I'll ask you a couple more questions, if that's okay? Yeah. I think it will be interesting for students to know more about, I don't know, like how do you find the topic that's really interests you? Like, what was that process? Because like you came into Kenya probably was some different interests, and
Very
now
different.
you're doing completely a different.
Yeah, I mean, I went to Kenyan, or my whole life, I wanted to go the STEM route and be a doctor. And over the process, I think I became really interested in psychology.
Right.
And I think every single school I applied to for the academic interest part, I put down psychology, which I'm so glad I didn't go to a big school, because I would have, you know, it would have been psych, chem, bio, physics for the 4 years. And, you know, who knows where I'd be now. So liberal arts, or like usually schools in general, kind of have some sort of a curriculum that's catered, that's curated. So in some schools that could be core classes you take during your first year. In the case of Kenyan, is our diversification requirement.
Right.
And what that means is you take 2 classes in each of our 4 divisions, which is human sciences, social sciences, natural sciences, and humanities, social sciences, natural sciences, and the arts. You take 2 classes in each of the 4 divisions. People do it during their first year. Did you do it? I did it during my first year. I did all of it. So
I'm still finishing it up.
Yeah, so it helps you kind of get a wide array of academic interests. So for me, obviously, when I was interested in psychology, the first class I took at Kenyon was Psychology 101, Intro to Psychology. Yeah. But because of the requirement in place, I was also pushed outside of my comfort zone to take things like political science or economics or sociology, which is something I've never studied before, to fulfill the requirement. But in the process, you kind of learn something completely new. So I took Intro to Economics, and I was like, this is so cool. Yeah. Let me do a double major in psych and econ, like what you're doing. And then I started taking political science. I started taking sociology. I was like, actually, those are cool as well. So let's find a major where I can do all of this. And that was international studies for me, because it's an interdisciplinary classes where you have to take classes in like 4 or 5 or 6 different disciplines. So yeah, it's a process of discovery. And I think the biggest reward you can get out of a liberal arts school is the wide array of classes you can take. So definitely don't box yourself in. Definitely take, you know, the weirdest class. Kenyon has one of the class in religious studies called From Beyonce to the Bible. And it talks about the African-American experience in the United States. I don't know what the most interesting class you took at Kenyon was, but to me that was that's pretty incredible, where you just analyze the Lemonade album for, a few months. Yeah.
Quite cool. Yeah. All right, let's honestly, guys, if you guys have any questions, just ask away. But if not, this Zoom is recorded, so we'll definitely post it up soon. So let's give it a couple more minutes, and if not, we'll end it.
Oh, what's like the most interesting class you took at Kenyon?
I would say the one that we are in right now, Econ of Development, because it's pretty applicable to where, like, for my country, for example, for Kazakhstan. There, you look at it through different cases and studies and theories and models. So I think it's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Public policy might be the next one.
Public policy. Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, another class that I enjoyed would probably be Cause for Justice. I think it was quite interesting because we go chronologically from, the beginning of the establishment of the political science up to these days. So we start from like Aristotle and Greeks and go until like Solzhenitsyn from Russia and stuff like that. So it's quite interesting.
You talk about the idea of justice.
Yeah, try to.
Yeah.
All right. I guess that's it for tonight. Thank you everyone for joining us. The most important thing, this is recorded, so we'll post it up soon on our YouTube channel or Instagram. So thank you again, Jodi-Ann, for joining us.
No worries.
It's an honor for us to share this time together.
No, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. There are people saying thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Could I just ask a quick question?
Yeah, of course.
That's for Jodi-Ann.
Yeah.
So you completed your bachelor's degree in international affairs, you said, right?
Yeah. Or I'm almost there. I have a month left. Yeah, but yeah.
Okay. So you're about to do your master's, because I skipped first 20 minutes. That's why I'm just trying to catch up.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah. So I graduate from my undergrad in May. And I start master's. Yeah.
So you're about to do to go for development.
Yeah, development studies.
This is nice. Okay, thank you.
No worries.
Informative.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, guys. We're gonna log off. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye.
Thank you.